Welcome to the FY26 Rural Cooperative Development Grants Program NOFO Technical Assistance webinar. I am Edwin Lewis, the National Program Leader with NIFA for this program. This is NIFA's second consecutive year of implementing the Rural Cooperative Development Grants Program on behalf of rural development. Today's session is a walkthrough of the FY26 RCDG Notice of Funding Opportunity. We'll cover what's new, who's eligible, how to apply, and how to make your proposal competitive. So I've introduced myself. Also a part of our program team is Isabella Jablonska. She'll be our program specialist. You may be hearing from her via email or in other ways later on in our process.
So the topics we'll cover today is an overview of NIFA, a program overview, provide some application details and documents, application evaluation process. We'll talk about tips for success, and then we'll provide some additional information and resources. RCDG is one of the many grant programs led by the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, also known as NIFA. NIFA is the USDA agency that funds extramural research, education, and extension, connecting science to practice nationwide. NIFA's mission is to invest in programs that ensure long-term viability of agriculture. NIFA provides strategic leadership, competitive funding, and emphasis on real-world adoption of proven practices and technologies. Next, we'll provide a program overview. So the purpose and priorities of the RCDG program is to enable nonprofit institutions to establish and operate centers of rural cooperative development. We'll call them centers, and they're referred to as centers throughout the NOFO. The goal of a center shall be to facilitate the creation of jobs in rural areas through the development of new rural cooperatives, value-added processing, or rural businesses. So who's eligible to apply? Only nonprofit institutions, including institutions of higher education that meet the nonprofit definition. I encourage you to refer to the program regulation, and there's links in the NOFO to the program regulations for more details about who's eligible and not eligible to apply. So eligible projects. So projects must meet all of the following criteria. Rurality. You'll see the definition so this whole section is actually on page 10 of the NOFO. And when you see that, you'll see a link to the program regulation where there is a definition for rurality. Project focus is establishing or operating a center with the goal of creating jobs in rural areas via cooperatives, value-added processes in rural businesses, as we mentioned previously. Amount requested. The amount requested must not exceed the maximum amount allowed. So as we're doing our initial screening, if your request is beyond the maximum amount we allowed, it is likely that your project will not even be reviewed. And then matching funds, another very important point, must be provided. You can see details again on the NOFO, but I encourage you to look at the program regulations. There is a link by matching funds. There is a very specific formula for calculating your match funds, and we'll talk about it again later, but I'll emphasize it a couple of times. Your matching funds must be a match of 25% of the federal award and the match amount, the total project amount, 25% of that amount combined. And again, I encourage you to go to the program regulation to look at that formula and that definition. So application submission and award limitations. Let's talk a little bit about this. Um, Eligible institutions may not submit more than one application as a lead institution in the same grant year. So if you're applying this year, you cannot submit two applications, only one per year from your institution. On point 2 and point 3, let me just give a little bit of context here. So point 2 just says the program does not allow entities to have two active awards, and that's actually in the program regulations. Last year in FY25, because of the program regulations, we received applications that had start dates of January or later in the month, later in the calendar year, I believe, either January or October or January. Once we process those awards, we process them based on NIFA's regulations, which is start dates must be before October 1, so September 30th or before. Consequently, a lot of project directors felt like their projects are going to be condensed, and so we encouraged them to apply for no-cost extension so that they could get they have sufficient time to fulfill their project goals and objectives. So we have a number of project directors who apply for no-cost extensions, and so for this year only in FY25, FY26, we will accept projects that are still active because they applied for no cost extensions. Now moving forward, because we have a clear date in there that your project start date must be September 30th or before, moving forward, we do not intend to allow that type of overlap. So moving forward, you will not be able to have two active projects at the same time. But this year, if you still have a project and you requested a no-cost extension, we are accepting your applications this year. So let's talk briefly about allowable and unallowable costs. There's not a lot of information in the NOFO, but there is a link in the NOFO to allowable and unallowable costs in the program regulations. So I strongly encourage you to visit the program regulations so that you can understand what's allowable, what's not allowable. I've had discussions with certain applicants or potential applicants who, when they understood the unallowable costs, realized that this program was probably not for them. So certainly encourage you before you submit your application or spend too much more time on it, that you visit the program regulation to understand what types of costs are allowable and not allowable. So we shared this information before on matching. Match is required. Applicants must provide a cost share contribution to the project of 25%. Or if you are a 1994, one of our tribal institutions, 5% is your required match. But that match is of the total award costs, which is the federal portion that NIFA provides and your plan match. And so it's 25% of that total amount, not just 25% of the federal match. If you calculate it based on 25% of just the federal portion, your match will be less than 25% and your project will be ineligible for even review. Okay, so to ensure that you have sufficient match that you are pledging, make sure that you look at the example and the definition in the program regulation and that you provide sufficient matching funds. So let's talk now about application, some of the application details and the documents that are required. So application, first let's just talk about some changes from the prior year or prior years. There are certain changes that you'll see in the NOFO, and those changes might not be consistent with some of the language in the program regulation. And so where NIFA has made changes in the NOFO that is inconsistent with the program regulation, the NOFO will take precedence. And so you'll see some of that as we go through some of the changes for this year. So we are now providing a flexible period of performance. You can apply for a project for 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. So that you have a range of 12 to 36 months for your period of performance that you choose. Okay, the award start date has to be no earlier or no later than September 30th. So it could be September 15th, September 1st, or before, but it cannot be October 1 or after. In FY25 only, we talked about this, that we are accepting applications from those who filed no cost extensions, and so there may be some project overlap in terms of period of performance. So this year, USDA in general have moved to the Science CV, and there's guidance both in the NOFO and in our NIFA application guide on the Science CV. So we strongly encourage you to make sure you understand the Science CV. We are no longer accepting our old forms of current and pending support. So we are now exclusively requiring the Science CV process. We also strongly encourage you to pay attention to the administration's executive orders. And so NIFA and USDA are no longer funding any projects that do not align with the administration's executive orders. And then the NOFO mentions semi-annual reports, and we told our awardees last year that they do not have to do that. Our systems at NIFA only accepts annual reports, so we will take care of those for those who are awarded this year. We'll have a new awardees, a new grantees webinar, and we'll talk about the reporting requirements for the program. Application details. Again, if you have been in the application, you know this already, so I won't spend a lot of time here. But the applications are due July 24th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Strongly encourage you to submit early. I know it's a short window in terms of the open period this year, but I strongly encourage you not to wait until an hour before or 2 hours before to try to submit, because NIFA does not accept late applications unless there are extreme situations with grants.gov that has to be documented that they had an issue that justifies your late application. The total funding available this year is $5 million. The maximum amount is $1 million. One of the questions I have received is, if I select a 36-month period, $1 million, am I getting money each year for that 36-month period or that 3-year period? The answer is no. You will actually be, if we provide you an award for 36 months of $1 million, that will be your FY26 award, and that $1 million will be available to you. Your budget must have a budget plan for $1 million over 36 months. So it's a one-time award. It is not what we call a continuation award, where you'll get increments over the 3-year period. And again, one application per institution. Key documents that you have to submit, and I really want you to pay attention to this slide: your project summary or your abstract, your project narrative, bibliographies or reference lists, data management plan, and again, look at the NOFO to see if there's other required documents, and these documents must be in PDF format. NIFA does not accept applications into our system that are not PDF. So you might submit your project summary and your project narrative and say, hey, those documents are there, but if they are not in PDF, NIFA will not accept them, and we will not review your application. So some of the details about project narratives. So the project narrative is limited to 20 pages, and we strictly enforce it when we do our initial screening. And one of the things we screen for is, did the applicant go beyond the required limit? And that is to ensure fairness to all of our applicants. And so we limit all of our applicants to 20 pages to propose their plan for their project, and we cut it off at that. So if you go 21 pages, your application won't even be reviewed because you exceeded that page limit. Within that 20 pages, again, some key things you just want to include your headings and things of that nature, and again, lay out your clear plan of action. Here's one thing that I do want to note. In the program regulation, it requires that you include a title page and a table of content. Those two things will not count toward your 20-page limit. So your title page and your table content, we will not count that toward your 20-page limit. Data management plan, it's a 2-page document that we require for pretty much all of NIFA's programs. For more information on a data management plan, there is a link here, but here are the key things that we are looking for. But again, in the NOFO and on the link provided, there's some clear guidance on what we're looking for in the data management plan. Application submission. And again, I made this point earlier, so I won't harp on it too hard. But application submission is through grants.gov only. Your documents must be in PDF, and those PDFs should not be password protected. And we do not use third-party PDF builders. So, and this is critical because every year, I work I lead a number of different grant programs. I think currently 5 or 6 grant programs, and every cycle we receive application, and if one of the critical documents, like a project narrative or another document, budget narrative, is not in PDF and we can't review it, we will not accept it later as an email attachment. We have to go with the package that was submitted prior to the deadline. So just keep that in mind. The application evaluation process. So this slide shows NIFA standard process, but let me share with you how we are going to evaluate this year. In prior years, rural development used internal rural development staff to review and serve as panelists. During the transition, we have been encouraged to move forward with NIFA's process of recruiting primarily external reviewers with the appropriate expertise. So that is the way we're moving forward this year. We have recruited external panelists with appropriate expertise who will review and evaluate the strengths and weaknesses and provide scoring, ranking recommendations for the proposal. Because of time constraints this year, we are not assembling the reviewers into a panel discussion. We will use their recommendations and we will make funding decisions within NIFA. The evaluation criteria is laid out very clearly in the NOFO. And so you have questions about, what are they looking for? What should I focus on? Go to the evaluation criteria and you'll understand exactly what our panel reviewers will be looking at and how the weight that they'll put on each one of these sections. Experience, 30 points. The work plan budget area, 45 points. Networking, 10 points. Qualifications of your key personnel, 10 points. The matching fund requirements, 5 points. And then regional and national scope is an area that we've added within the last couple of years. And so that's 25 additional points if your project is regional or national in scope. One of the questions I received a couple of times is, so how does NIFA define the region, national scope? It is actually laid out in the evaluation criteria. There is no other guidance on regional, national scope. So follow that criteria. That's exactly what our reviewers will be looking at. So timeline for the competitive program. On an average year, on a typical year, our competitive process takes about 6 to 9 months from the time that the applications are due to the award being made to the institution. Obviously, this year and last year are very condensed timelines. So Awards have to be made prior to September 30th. That's why the NOFO was open for such a brief period of time. That is why we don't have the time to actually assemble the panel for a panel discussion and things of that nature. So we will be moving very fast to make sure that we are able to obligate the funds before September 30th. So let's talk about a few tips for success. Consider before you start writing, is your topic appropriate for this program, or is it better for another program? And again, earlier I mentioned go to the program regulations, look at the NOFO carefully, look at the program regulations, look at what you're thinking about doing, and even determine whether the cost that I'm thinking about is even allowed for this program. Does it fit into the scope of what this program is really about? And then, am I eligible to apply? This is limited to nonprofit organizations. Do I have the proper documentation to show that I am a nonprofit organization? Point number 3, do you understand the requirements from the NOFO? And again, I've mentioned this a number of times, but it's not just the NOFO. Some of the mistakes made last year is that I believe applicants limited their reading and studying to the NOFO alone and did not click to the program regulations that are listed throughout the NOFO. And so I encourage you to both study the NOFO and the relevant sections of the program regulations that are referenced in the NOFO. Are you familiar with the application review process that we just covered? And do you have all the needed resources? Do you have the match requirement? Do you have the qualified staff to do the work? Are you engaged with enough stakeholders to really make this a center? Then tips, some tips. Sorry, I jumped ahead here. See if I can go back. It is not allowing me to go back. So what I'll do is I encourage you to watch the slides, get a copy of the slides. We'll have them, we'll post them. So let's just keep moving. Planning checklist. So application writing is a complex process and involves several steps. And so one of the things we want you to do is have a checklist for what you need to do. Well, one, the documents that are required, and make sure that you have a timeline that will allow you to submit. Although we're working with a condensed timeline, prepare a plan so that you can submit before the end date, and then some quality control checkpoints for yourself to make sure that things like I've converted all my documents to PDF and that I've submitted all of my documents. So make sure that you have a clear plan in place. The document checklist, we talked about this earlier, but I do want to just emphasize again, when we receive your applications, our first step is to do an initial screening. Before we make assignments to panelists to review, you have to get through the initial screening. And that initial screening is, are the essential documents there? For like the project narrative, did they go over the minimum, the maximum amount of pages, and are all the key documents in PDF? And so you have to make it through the initial screening process first. So again, make sure that you have a checklist for the documents that are required and that they are in PDF. Some additional resources, just mentioning one here. On our NIFA website, we have the NIFA Data Gateway. Here in this database, we have all of the NIFA previously funded projects. Last year, FY25 was our first year funding projects for the Rural Cooperative Development Grants Program. So if you're interested in the projects that we funded last year, just to kind of get an idea of the types of projects we fund, encourage you to visit the NIFA Data Gateway to look at kind of a brief overview. They don't have the full applications, but just a kind of a synopsis of the projects that we funded last year. Now, make this point that we do not want to see any of the same concepts, ideas, or language from those projects in there, so no duplication of what you might review in those applications. But again, just some ideas of the types of projects that are funded there. Here's just a list of other grant resources in our PowerPoint that the presentation will post on our website. You'll be able to click on all of these, but these are just really good resource documents that you might find valuable. So if you have any questions, I encourage you to send me an email at the RCDG email box. And I've been checking those boxes daily. So if you would send me an email, if you got questions, use this email box and we'll get back to you as quickly as we can. And then finally, I need to end with our non-discrimination statement. I will not read the entire document, but I do need to read the first paragraph, and then I'll summarize the next two paragraphs. In accordance with federal civil rights laws and U.S. Department of Agriculture civil rights regulations and policies, the USDA, its agencies, offices, and employees, and the institutions we partner with in administering USDA programs are prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, age, marital status, family, parental status, income derived from public assistance programs, political beliefs, or reprisal or retaliation for prior civil rights activities in any program or activity conducted or funded by USDA. Not all bases apply to all programs. Remedies and complaint filing deadlines vary by program or incident. The second paragraph says that those who have disabilities, if you need accommodations, there is opportunities for you to contact us and make that request for accommodations. If you feel like you've been discriminated against, there's also opportunity for you to reach out to file a complaint and get guidance on how to do so. And that's the third paragraph. So that concludes the webinar. I want to thank you for joining today and reviewing the application. Again, if you have questions, we have about a week left in the open period, but if you have questions, please send an email to me and we'll respond as quickly as we can. Thank you.